Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming this evening. We are in store for a fabulous, fabulous time. My name is Maria Stevens, and I am your president of the Eat Smart, Live Longer Club. Thank you. And we are super excited about tonight's presentation. I'd like to thank our valued sponsors, as well as the many Sun City volunteers who contribute their time and talents to make our ESLL Club such a success and actually be able to do evenings like this. And as many of you know, the Sun City Charter Club would not have been started over 10 years ago were it not for longtime Sun City residents, Karen Heitman and her sisters Mary Lou Beavers and Leslie Haas. We're so proud that our club and many success stories about our members have been featured in newspapers and magazines, locally, nationally, and even internationally. So with that, let me turn it over to one of our early club presidents and co-founder, Leslie Haas.
Thank you, Maria. A big thank you to my sisters, too, Karen and Mary Lou. And, of course, behind the scenes, there are always some important people. Richard and George Heitman have been helpful throughout the years. And thank you, Maria, for taking on the role of president. Plus, special thanks to our present and past officers, board members, committee chairs, and the many, many volunteers who donate their time and talents to this life-changing club. We're so honored to welcome Dr. Michael Greger back to Sun City again. For those who may be new, we've included many of his impressive credentials in your copy of the program. And let me give you a few of those credentials now. As founding member and fellow of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, Michael Greger, MD, is a physician, New York Times bestselling author, and internationally recognized speaker on nutrition, food safety, and public health issues. He is a graduate of Cornell University College of Agriculture and Life Sciences and the Tufts University School of Medicine. Dr. Greger, as you know, is the founder, president, and research director of nutritionfacts.org, the very, very popular nonprofit, science-based public service website. And not only is it free to use, but it's also free from advertising, and so we know that it is not biased. You probably already know that Dr. Greger is very skilled at presenting highly scientific data in an easy-to-understand and entertaining way, and his latest bestseller, How Not to Age, does not disappoint. It is fabulous. And with that, please join me in giving a great big Sun City welcome to Dr. Michael Greger.
Okay. My inspiration for writing How Not to Age was this consensus document compiled by the top researchers in the field to identify the most promising strategies to combat aging. They identified a list of essential pathways, for example, drugs that can block the hormone IGF-1, or drugs to block the pro-aging enzyme TOR. But I realized, wait a second, every single one of these could be regulated through diet. That became the opening section of the book. For example, boosting something called autophagy. At any given time, most of our cells are producing and assembling more than 10,000 distinct proteins, each of which can be damaged or misfolded at any time and require a cleanup on aisle 3. That's where autophagy comes from the Greek words for self-eating. It is a housekeeping process by which defective cellular components are broken down and scrapped for spare parts. It doubles as both salvage operation and quality control, renewing our cells in a sort of cellular reset. As one review put it, the janitor is the undercover boss. Self-digestion for lifespan extension. Enhanced autophagy delays aging. But unfortunately, our ability to take out the trash declines with age. The drug industry is eager to pharmacologically modulate autophagy to combat aging, but we can do it naturally. One way is through fasting. Unfortunately, autophagy doesn't really ramp up until a day or two of fasting, which may be too long to go unsupervised. Thankfully, there's another way to activate autophagy. You can fast or go fast. Exercise induces autophagy. As one of the researchers said, I've always known exercise was good for you, but when we found out it increased autophagy, I finally got a treadmill. Autophagy is activated after 60 minutes of moderate intensity exercise, such as brisk walking, but you have to do it enough because just 20 minutes fails to move the needle. What about diet? Any foods to avoid? Well, acrylamide can inhibit autophagy. Acrylamide is a toxin concentrated in French fries and potato chips. I heard that. It's formed during the frying process. The fact that high acrylamide exposure is associated with as much as double the risk of premature death would be consistent with an anti-autophagy effect, though diminished lifespans among eaters of fatty, salty snacks isn't exactly a revelation. You can't know if it's cause and effect until you put it to the very nice. Before being asked to eat a bag of potato chips every day for a month, study subjects were given weeks of boiled potatoes mixed with the same amount of fat and salt as the chips. Compared to the fatty, salty boiled potatoes, their C-reactive protein levels shot up 50% on the chips, suggesting chronic ingestion of acrylamide-containing products induces a pro-inflammatory state. However, deep frying causes the formation of all manner of undesired foodborne toxicants, so we can't be sure it was the acrylamide. As one of the earliest geriatric medicine textbooks put it in 1849, frying is an abomination. If you just must have your French fry fix, air frying produces about 90% less acrylamide. Anything that can help? Well, starving yourself generates discomfort, but there is something that activates autophagy that many people find comforting: coffee. About 20 studies have followed more than 10 million people over time, and those drinking 3 cups of coffee a day had a 13% lower risk of dying from all causes put together. And decaf appears to be just as protective, so it's not the caffeine, but rather the chlorogenic acid, the primary antioxidant in coffee found to enhance autophagy in human cells. More than 100 different types of coffee have been tested, and chlorogenic acid levels vary by more than 30-fold. The major contributor to this wide range was Starbucks, with its extremely low antioxidant content, thought to be because they roast their beans so dark that they destroy it. Instant coffee seems fine from an autophagy activation standpoint, and brewed has more than espresso. Paper filtered is the best because it traps the cholesterol-raising compounds in coffee, perhaps explaining why those drinking filtered coffee have even lower mortality rates than those drinking unfiltered coffee, though they both live longer than those not drinking any coffee at all. Any food components that activate autophagy? Spermidine, the longevity elixir. Spermidine. Don't be put off by the name. Spermidine and its byproduct spermine are actually found throughout the body. When it was later discovered independently in the muscles and brain, they called it musculamine and neurodine until they realized, it's all the same compound, and so naming rights defaulted to the less palatable original. Our body can make it from scratch, but we can also boost levels by eating spermidine-rich foods. which is good news because our spermidine levels tend to decline, with age dropping by more than half by the time we reach our 50s. This decline is seen across the biological spectrum with a remarkable exception. Naked mole rats, also known by their more cuddly nickname, sand puppy, considered to be a non-aging mammal, perhaps in part because they're able to maintain high levels of spermidine, something you also see in human centenarians. Hundreds of men and women in their 40s through 80s were followed for about 20 years, and after looking at 146 different components of their diets, the single one most predictive of longevity was spermidine. Higher spermidine intake is linked to lower mortality. Those who consume the most spermidine have a reduced risk of death from all major causes, which is what we'd expect from an anti-aging compound. To prove cause and effect, spermidine was fed to animals, and induction of autophagy by spermidine promotes longevity, increasing the lifespans of mice, for example, by as much as 25%. In a database of more than 1,000 life-extending compounds, among the small subset with the fewest side effects, spermidine has the largest documented lifespan extension. This led some to propose that spermidine may be an anti-aging vitamin. When we're younger, we seem to be able to make enough. But as we get older, we may need to start ensuring we're getting enough in our diet to maintain autophagy into old age. Well, if spermidine is an anti-aging vitamin, where is that vitamin found? Beans. Only in Sun City would I get a applause break for beans. Very nice. Beans are said to have the highest natural amounts. A fermented whole soy food called tempeh actually tops the list, followed by plain white mushrooms, though pig pancreas does take the bronze. The single most concentrated source, though, is wheat germ. Since the serving size is just a tablespoon, it's also the cheapest source, costing as little as 2 cents per milligram. These days, you just can't get a lot of pancreas for 2 cents. Does wheat germ actually do anything, though? Well, let's randomize people to some dinner rolls and find out. A randomized double-blind pilot in which older individuals were secretly sipped some spermidine in the form of bread rolls baked with wheat germ versus placebo rolls with wheat bran instead, and those with mild dementia improved way beyond all available anti-dementia treatments so far. Admittedly, that's not saying very much. The latest Alzheimer's drugs don't appear to work at all. All you get for your $56,000 is a dramatically increased risk of swelling or bleeding into your brain. When the FDA approved it anyway, the head of the American Geriatric Society replied, "My head just exploded." So, to wrap up this section, autophagy is considered the primary system for cleaning the body from the inside out. And we can boost autophagy with aerobic exercise, skipping the fries and chips, drinking coffee, and eating specific foods to reach a target of 20 milligrams of spermidine a day. I offer similar diet and lifestyle takeaways for each of the other 10 anti-aging pathways, but also want to touch on the other 3 major sections of the book. Part 2 focuses on the diets and lifestyles of the healthiest and longest lived people around the world. Studies following identical twins suggest only about 25% of the difference in lifespan between people is due to genetics. And so what can we do over the majority of which we may have some control? Well, the media loves stories about hard-living centenarians who attribute their longevity to some combination of lard, vodka, and favorite brand of cigarette. But how do the oldest and healthiest really eat and live? That's what we have the blue zones for, areas of exceptional longevity around the world where there may be up to 10 times the rates of those reaching triple digits. What lessons can we learn? Well, the Blue Zones organization distilled findings from more than 150 dietary surveys from the world's longest living people to create a set of 10 food guidelines. The foundation of the Blue Zones food guidelines is make your diet at least 95% plant-based, avoiding highly processed foods, and emphasizing beans as the healthiest source of protein, water as the best beverage, and nuts as the healthiest snack. That's the foundation. The final 5 guidelines are to go easy on fish, eliminate eggs/sugar, reduce dairy, and retreat from meat. There are a number of shared Blue Zone lifestyle characteristics, like avoiding smoking, daily exercise, but plant-based nutrition appears to be the principal component. No surprise, since the number 1 risk factor for death in these United States is the American diet. Unsafe sex? Is bad. A sedentary lifestyle? Bad. Alcohol and drugs, especially tobacco? Bad. But cigarettes only kill about 500,000 Americans every year, whereas our diet kills many more. We are what we eat, which is good news because it means we have the power. Changing from a typical diet to a better diet would be expected to increase the lifespan of women by 11 years, men by 13 years. The largest life expectancy gains would be made by eating more legumes. In other words, more beans, split peas, chickpeas, and lentils. So if there's one thing we can eat, legumes for longevity, hummus for health. Then comes whole grains and nuts, and eating less meat. And it doesn't take much. The NIH-AARP study is the largest forward-looking study on diet and health in history, based on its 6 million person years of observation, replacing just 3% of daily caloric intake from animal protein with plant protein was associated with a 10% decreased risk of overall mortality. Just swapping 3%. Of all the animal protein sources, eggs were found to be the worst. Swapping in 3% of plant protein for egg protein was associated with twice the benefit, 20% lower mortality, having scrambled tofu instead. But does eating healthier actually slow down aging? Adopting a plant-based dietary pattern, especially when rich in healthful plant foods, was associated with a substantially lowered pace of aging. All we need now is an interventional trial to seal the deal, and here we go. Randomize hundreds of individuals to a diet centered around whole plant foods, or to exercise, or to neither. And though sadly the physical activity alone failed to slow the aging process, those in the plant-based dietary intervention group has significant slowing of biological aging. In terms of lifespan, eating a burger may cut one's life as short as smoking 2 cigarettes. So if it wouldn't even occur to you to light up before and after lunch, maybe you should choose the bean burrito instead. Of course, it's not just about adding years to your life, but life to your years. An unhealthy aging index was devised to measure functional impairments, vitality, mental health, not just physical health. Substituting even just 1% of plant protein for animal protein appeared to lead to significantly less deficit accumulation, and substituting 5% may reduce one's risk of dying from the greatest deficit of all, dementia. That may help explain why those who don't eat any meat at all may be up to 3 times less likely to become demented in later life. But again, it's not all or nothing. In fact, the worst thing about humanity's diet is neither animal nor vegetable, but mineral. Basically, we should switch from sodium salt, sodium chloride, to potassium salt, potassium chloride, Happy to talk about more in the Q&A, but have a limited time today. What about fish? Unfortunately, our oceans have essentially become humanity's sewer. Everything eventually flows into the sea. So the consumption of contaminated seafood has become the main route of human exposure to chemical pollutants. Yes, a variety of foods are affected, but the number one source of DDT? Fish. Number one source of PCBs? Fish. Salmon is the worst when it comes to PCBs, followed by canned tuna. Salmon also has the highest levels of dioxin-like compounds. So on the one hand, fish has long been viewed as this healthful dietary component because of those long-chain omega-3s, but on the other hand, we have so polluted our world that we're now seeing heavy metal, pesticides, flame retardants in fish, forever chemicals, which may explain why, despite their omega-3s, there's been this failure to consistently observe beneficial effects of fish consumption. So maybe if we had a time machine to go back before the Industrial Revolution, that'd be one thing. But now we have studies like this, where mice fed farmed salmon fillets with common levels of persistent organic pollutants were found to develop insulin resistance, glucose intolerance, abdominal obesity, fatty liver, chronic low-grade inflammation. So even just kind of background levels that might be presumed to be safe could completely counteract the potential benefits of omega-3s, in particular leading to serious metabolic issues. Now, for mercury, it's really more about brain function. Hundreds of thousands of babies born with brain damage every year in the United States as the consequence of their mothers consuming mercury-contaminated fish during pregnancy, with the resulting loss of intelligence estimated to cost our nation billions of dollars of lost productivity every year. In the aging literature, there are cases like this: man with years of progressive memory loss, tentatively diagnosed with Alzheimer's dementia. His friends and family assumed he was nearing the end of his life. But a detailed history revealed that he had consumed swordfish once or twice a week. When the fish was removed from his diet, his mercury level fell, and his memory bounced back. No more dementia. So it seemed he didn't have Alzheimer's after all, but rather mercury poisoning from just a handful of monthly meals of contaminated fish. You can see the same remarkable reversals with hair loss. Here's a common story. Perimenopausal woman seeks help for hair loss. Blood tests indicate elevated mercury levels. No surprise, as she had a diet high in tuna. But within 2 months of skipping the fish, her hair started to grow back and eventually regrew completely. So, doctors should consider screening for mercury toxicity when they see hair loss, since there's something we can do about it. Instructing patients to reduce fish intake could offer relief of symptoms, uncover dietary habits that may be a source of heavy metal-induced hair loss. Though, admittedly, sometimes heavy metal leads to too much hair. Let's move on to part 3. What can we do to preserve our bones, bowels, bladder, and circulation, our hair, hearing, and hormone balance, our immune function, joint health, mind and our muscles, sex life and skin, our teeth, vision, and finally, our dignity in death? For example, did you know that 85% of age-related bone fracture risk has nothing to do with bone mineral density? That's just been drilled into our heads by Big Pharma and a billion-dollar screening industry. Fractures are primarily due to falling, not osteoporosis. So it's the age-related muscle loss and impaired balance that may be breaking most of our bones, which is good news because there's something we can do about it. 7 randomized controlled trials found that strength and balance trainings can cut fracture rates nearly in half, and that's just during the trial. In the 5 years after this 1-year study ended, those who had previously been randomized to the combined strength and balance group suffered 74% fewer fractures. Right? That's far more effective than osteoporosis drugs like Fosamax that can cause fractures, atypical femoral fractures, in as many as 1 in 300 users. We call them atypical because they occur not after a fall or a trauma, but just during routine activities like walking, twisting at the waist, or even just standing still. Thanks to the drug, your femur, your thigh bone, the biggest bone in your body, just snaps in half. Too cruel an irony from a drug that's supposed to protect your bones. This is what it looks like on X-ray. Ouch. After bones, I talk about preserving your bowel function in chapter number 2. Randomize constipated diabetics to either cookies containing a tablespoon a day of ground flaxseed or flax-free placebo cookies for 12 weeks. And not only does the flax improve constipation symptoms, but resulted in 8-pound weight loss over placebo, 25-point lower blood sugars, an astounding drop in hemoglobin A1C, and a 17-point lower LDL cholesterol, all for about 10 cents a day of ground flax seeds. Bladder function. Prevalence of overactive bladder syndrome increases with age, reaching about 1 in 3. No wonder bladder-relaxing drugs are a multi-billion-dollar industry, yet may only reduce bathroom breaks compared to placebo by a half a pee a day. But a quarter teaspoon a day of dried cranberry powder worked nearly 4 times better, about 2 fewer daily trips to the bathroom over placebo, and that's without the drug's side effects. Problems with dry mouth, constipation, sedation, cognition, retention, and vision, leading about 2/3 of users to stop taking these drugs, whereas cranberries are just tangy. Urinary incontinence is a common problem among older adults, particularly women, thanks to childbirth. Systemic menopausal hormone therapy, like Premarin, actually makes it worse, though local vaginal estrogen may help. But what works 5 times better than estrogen cream, though? Kegel exercises, pelvic floor exercises, as I detail in the section. But if 1,000 postmenopausal women take the standard hormone regimen for 10 years, you'd not only expect 876 extra cases of urinary incontinence that you wouldn't have had otherwise, but 9 more cases of invasive breast cancer. 8 more cases of heart disease, probably 22 more cases of dementia, 21 more cases of gallbladder disease, 9 more strokes, and 21 more blood clots, though not a single partridge nor pear tree. However, hormone therapy is highly effective in decreasing menopausal hot flashes. Is there any way to keep cool without the clots and cancer? In the U.S., menopausal hot flashes are considered inevitable, but there isn't even a word for hot flash in the Japanese language. This may be due to their greater consumption of soy foods, but you don't really know until you put it to the test. Harvard funded a randomized controlled trials, a half a cup of unsalted soy nuts a day, and achieved, compared to the control group, a 40 to 45% reduction in hot flashes within 2 weeks. Given that a plant-based diet may also be helpful for managing menopausal symptoms, researchers decided to combine the two, a plant-based diet and whole soybeans. In fact, 2 randomized controlled trials found that plant-based nutrition with a daily half cup of whole soybeans, like out of a can, can reduce the number of serious hot flashes by 84 to 88%. Overall, most randomized to the plant-based bean group ended up free of moderate to severe hot flashes, compared to about 95% still suffering in the control group. Lots of other things can help. Whole fennel seeds, powdered into capsules to pit them against placebo in a double-blind trial, significantly improve menopausal symptoms at a dose of less than a teaspoon a day. Fenugreek may also help at a dose of 1.5 teaspoons, though not as much as hormones, but without the side effects. Though fenugreek can make your pee smell like maple syrup. Sounds like a bonus. The nice thing about studying spices is that entire servings can be stuffed into a pill. That you can do placebo-controlled trials. A quarter teaspoon of black cumin powder a day led to significant improvements over placebo in memory and other tests of cognition within 9 weeks. Black sesame seeds, less than a teaspoon a day of ground black sesame seeds stuffed into capsules against placebo, drove down systolic blood pressures by 8 points within a month. If sustained, that alone could decrease your risk of stroke by about a quarter and is delicious. What else can we powder? Strawberries. Osteoarthritis patients are randomized to 2 ounces of freeze-dried strawberry powder versus a fake strawberry-flavored and colored placebo powder. And compared to placebo, the real strawberry significantly decreased constant pain, intermittent pain, and total limb pain, and improved disability and overall quality of life. Why do we care? Because osteoarthritis is the most frequent cause of physical disability among older men and women. Yet how do we treat it? Acetaminophen, Tylenol, is the first-line painkiller. But guess what? It doesn't work much better than a sugar pill. But at least it's not going to make matters worse, like other things we doctors have dreamed up, like steroid injections, which actively worsen joint deterioration and don't even offer better pain relief than placebo, or arthroscopic surgery, which may end up tripling our risk of having to get a full knee replacement. I mean, so look, even if the strawberry study is some total fluke, well, what's the worst that can happen? Tastier smoothies? And less than a quarter of a teaspoon of ground ginger a day can beat out placebo for joint pain. Researchers conclude that ginger is recommended as a safe drug for these patients, but by drug, they're just talking about a few pinches of the ground ginger you can buy at any store. There was even a study on topical ginger, at least when applied to the scrotum. Paper-thin slices of ginger applied over the inflamed testicles, and the researchers were on the ball, healing nearly 3 times faster than placebo. So far, I've touched on preserving your bones, bowels, bladder, hormones, and joints, but preserving your mind is the largest chapter in the book, as dementia is one of our most pressing public health problems and most feared condition of later life. You know, there's this common misconception that you have no control over whether or not you develop dementia. But the good news is that although Alzheimer's may be incurable, at least it is preventable. There's this emerging consensus that what's good for our hearts is good for our heads, because clogging of the arteries inside our brain with atherosclerotic plaque is thought to play a role in the development of Alzheimer's dementia. This is what our cerebral arteries should look like: open, clean, allowing blood to flow throughout our brain. This is what atherosclerosis in our head looks like. Clogged with cholesterol, closing off arteries, clamping down on blood flow. What kind of brain arteries do you want in your head? Too much cholesterol in our blood is unanimously recognized to be a risk factor for the development of Alzheimer's disease. Those with a total cholesterol of 225 or more, which is not that uncommon, may have nearly 25 times the odds of ending up with amyloid plaques in their brains 10 to 15 years later. Cholesterol explains how the Alzheimer's gene, ApoE, ravages the brain. After all, what is ApoE? What is the Alzheimer's gene? It's the primary cholesterol carrier inside the brain. LDL cholesterol with bad gene variants of ApoE averages 40 points higher, but switch people to a diet lower in animal fat, and diet can trump genetics. This may explain the so-called Nigerian paradox, where they have among the highest rates of the Alzheimer's gene, but among the lowest rates of Alzheimer's disease. How is that possible? Genes load the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. The paradox may be explained by their low cholesterol levels, presumably due to their diets low in animal fat. Human beings may have evolved to maintain an LDL cholesterol level of around 25, but the average in the Western world is more like, 120. No wonder heart disease is the leading cause of death in high-income countries. And guess what's killer number 2? Dementia. This helps explain why the so-called Alzheimer's gene is the single most important gene when it comes to longevity, too, which is good news, because even if we've been dealt some bad genetic cards, we still may be able to reshuffle the deck with diet. So, in terms of dietary guidelines for the prevention of Alzheimer's disease, we should center our diets around vegetables, legumes, fruits, and whole grains. In other words, the dietary pillar of lifestyle medicine, which is whole food, plant-based nutrition. Or, if that's too complicated, plants, and more plants. Any plants in particular? Note that Loma Linda's Alzheimer's prevention program singles out berries and greens. The main reason greens make it into my anti-aging 8, though, is because the nitrates in a serving or two of greens can slow our metabolic rate for the same reason that a little shot of beet juice enables freedivers to hold their breath longer. It improves the efficiency of our mitochondria, the little power plants within our cells, allowing us to effectively extract more energy from each breath. And the candle that burns half as bright burns twice as long. Now, normally you can only see this kind of metabolic slowing with severe calorie restriction, but instead of walking around starving all the time, you can just eat a big salad. What else can greens do? In the Harvard Nurses Health Study, the consumption of leafy greens appears to protect against the development of frailty. And when put to the test in a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial, the equivalent of 2/3 of a cup of spinach led to a significant boost in muscle strength, muscle mass, and muscle quality in older men and women. A single cup of cooked greens worth of vegetable nitrates significantly boosted maximum power and velocity in the quads so much it was functionally equivalent to acutely reversing the effects of several decades of aging. A single cup of cooked greens. Popeye was right. About the spinach, not so much the pipe smoking. Of course, when most people think about preserving muscle mass into old age, they don't think spinach, they think protein. But if you put together all the randomized controlled trials of adding extra protein to the diets of older men and women, you find no evidence that adding protein increases muscle mass or strength. But what if you have sarcopenia, excessive age-related muscle loss? I mean, surely then protein helps, right? No. No significant effect on muscle performance or muscle strength. What does work? Exercise. When it comes to age-related muscle loss, is use it or lose it. But maybe exercise plus protein? No! Protein supplementation does not significantly augment the effects of strength training in older adults. In fact, one of my anti-aging 8 is protein restriction down to recommended levels. Why do longevity experts like Walter Longo recommend people cut down on protein to live longer? Here's what Luigi Fontana wrote in his book. He's the director of another leading longevity research center. Excess protein won't mass your muscles, but it will accelerate aging. How do you boost the pro-longevity hormone FGF21? Dietary protein restriction. How do you suppress the age-accelerating hormone IGF-1? You do it through dietary protein restriction. How do you suppress the so-called motor of aging enzyme mTOR? Dietary protein restriction. In fact, protein restriction was the only thing I could find that could going to slow down all of the 11 aging pathways, which is good news because it's easier to cut down on protein than it is to cut back on everything and walk around hungry all the time. And it may even be easier than that. Most, or even all, of the life-extending benefits of protein restriction may be due to just restricting particularly problematic amino acids like methionine. In that case, you can even keep your protein intake the same, but just swap sources from animal proteins like meat to plant protein sources like beans. So, in humans, methionine restriction can be achieved using a predominantly plant-based diet, which makes methionine restriction feasible as a life extension strategy. Of course, drug companies look at this same data and think, what pharmaceuticals can we develop to mimic these dietary interventions? Anything else to maintain muscle mass other than greens and machines? How about cocoa beans? Older men and women randomized to a single tablespoon of regular cocoa powder a day experienced a significant improvement in muscle mass, strength, and all 4 tests of physical performance. What else can cocoa do? Increase the circulation within our skin, boosting it 70% within 2 hours after less than a tablespoon. Do that every day, and within 3 months you end up, this is the muscle mass, strength, and all 4 tests of physical performance. Here is the increased circulation within the skin. You do that every day, you end up with significantly improved skin thickness, density, and hydration within 3 months. Keep it up for 6 months, and you see an improvement in wrinkles. All from making your life just a little more chocolatey by adding some natural cocoa powder to your daily diet. I put in my oatmeal with some canned water-packed tart cherries for kind of a morning time chocolate-covered cherry sensation. What else can we do for our skin? Well, there's certainly other antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, glycotoxin-free foods. So when patients inquire about a diet that might contribute to younger-looking skin, evidence supports the recommendation to follow a whole food, plant-based diet. But the most important thing to prevent skin aging is avoid the sun. Exposure to sunlight may account for up to 90% of visible skin aging. That's why dermatologists agree there's nothing more important to slow the signs of aging than to protect your skin from the sun. Check out this trucker who spent years getting more sun on the left side of his face through the driver's side window. So, the gold standard is considered to be the use of sunscreen in the daytime and so-called retinoids at night. They're talking about a prescription-only form of topical vitamin A, known as all-trans-retinoic acid, or tretinoin, sold as Retin A, that has been widely proven to improve skin appearance. The only problem is that it may kill you. Topical tretinoin therapy and all-cause mortality, a randomized controlled trial, had to be stopped early because significantly more people were dying in the retinoic acid group compared to the placebo cream group. So, what can we use? Topical niacinamide, also known as nicotinamide, is described as one of the best-studied anti-aging skin cream ingredients, though that's not saying much, but it has been shown to reduce yellowing, wrinkling, blotchiness, and dark spots in aging facial skin. For example, significantly reducing crow's feet wrinkles around the eyes. This was a split face study in which 64% of the niacinamide side eye wrinkles had marked or moderate improvement compared to 0% of the placebo side eyes. Topical vitamin C offers similar improvements over placebo in wrinkles, sallowness, skin tone. Unfortunately, vitamin C is unstable in creams, turning an unsightly brown when it oxidizes. So instead, the skincare industry uses these vitamin C esters or derivatives, but there's no evidence that these compounds actually work. But the good news is you can make your own. The 10% solution used in this study retails for a ridiculous $127 an ounce, but you can make a DIY solution more than 2,000 times cheaper by simply buying ascorbic acid in bulk and mixing 3 grams into 30 grams of water at a cost of about a nickel per ounce. Drip a few drops in the palm of your hand, apply to your face, neck, and upper chest daily. Just don't get it in your eyes. And look, you can do the same thing with niacinamide, which is even more ridiculously priced, but you can buy it in bulk as well at a 5,000% discount. I could go on, and the book certainly does, but let me close out by going back to the basics. From the anti-aging journal Rejuvenation Research, finally, a regimen to extend human life expectancy. Was it some exotic new stem cell treatment or gene therapy? No, it was a reference to this Harvard analysis. More than 100,000 men and women were followed for decades, and just a few basic lifestyle behaviors appeared to translate into 12 to 14 years of extra lifespan for the average 50-year-old. Even at age 50, may be able to add an extra dozen years to your lifespan, even at age 70. There appears to be about 10 years on the table. And if you clean up your life up before age 50, then nearly 18 years may be up for grabs based on these simple common sense behaviors, turning back the clock not with a drug or a DeLorean, but just by eating and living more healthfully. A midlife shift between the ages of 45 and 64, and even the barest of minimums. We're talking at least 5 daily servings of fruits and vegetables, walking even just 20 minutes a day, maintaining a healthy weight, not smoking, can result in a substantial reduction in mortality, even in the immediate future. We're talking a 40% lower risk of dying in the subsequent 4 years. The researchers conclude that making the necessary changes to adhere to a healthy lifestyle is extremely worthwhile, and middle age certainly not too late to act. We hold the power. Okay, so I was only able to get about 100 studies. How Not to Age ended up with over 13,000 citations. So I was only able to cover about 1% of the book. For the other 99%, check out your local public library. If you do have your books here, I'd be happy to sign them after questions. And all proceeds I receive from the sales of all my books goes directly to charity. I just want you and your loved ones to enjoy the longest, healthiest life. Thank you. All right, questions?
Can you speak to the topic of, you were talking about cholesterol and dementia and Alzheimer's, and with cholesterol being too high, it contributes to it, but now all the studies showing statins pushing it too low can also contribute to dementia? No.
Nope.
So anything below, I know that as we get below 140, hormone production is disrupted?
Nope.
No? Okay. So you think a cholesterol of 100 or below?
No, lower the better. So we actually have, it was all theoretical, right? So cholesterol, our body uses cholesterol to create steroid hormones and create, and so the concern was that, adrenal hormones, if our cholesterol went too low, then we might run into the problems. So it was a theoretical concern. And then the drug industry came up with PCSK9 inhibitors, where you can drop people's cholesterol to the teens or even single digits. And surely at that low cholesterol, oh my God, no difference in hormone production or anything. So it just didn't appear. And indeed, as I was saying in the lecture, we probably evolved getting about an LDL of 25. And so, we evolved, basically, we had no concentrated sources of fat. Once in a while, we could eat a few brains or something. But until about 2 million years ago, when we had tools, we were eating what the rest of our great ape cousins were eating until the Miocene era, 20 million years ago, which is almost exclusively plant-based diet. That's our entire physiology. No wonder having these high cholesterol levels can lead to such devastating consequences.
Hi. Are there benefits to drinking alkaline water?
There are no benefits to drinking alkaline water except for those who sell alkaline water.
Okay. Can you please clarify something? You're talking about protecting the skin. Now, since our vitamin D seems to go down as we age, are you saying we should avoid the sun or
great question.
seek the sun and cover ourselves?
So what if we wear sunscreen like we're supposed to? What about the sunshine vitamin D? Again, that's a theoretical concern that researchers were concerned enough about that they actually put it to the test. They randomized people to wear sunscreen or not and found no difference in vitamin D levels. Now, it's possible that people are really bad at putting on sunscreen. And so they're missing all sorts of spots and not putting on enough. And so, although theoretically you really should be blocking vitamin D production, it does not actually happen in real life. And so you get the best of both worlds. You get protection from skin cancer and skin aging without impairing vitamin D production.
Hello. You spoke about exercise, and your slides indicated that you'd need like an hour of exercise per day. Could that be cumulative, or does that have to be all at once?
Yeah. So now there are overwhelming benefits of exercise, particularly for health span, that are separate from these autophagy benefits. So I just talked about what to do to boost autophagy, one of the anti-aging pathways. Even exercising any amount is better than none for all sorts of reasons. Protects our knees, so any amount of exercise is better than nothing. But if you actually want to get autophagy, you actually want to clean out your cells, the cellular debris that contributes to the aging process, really 60 minutes at a time. It really seems that finally your muscles are like, whoa, all right, we really got to clean stuff out. But again, this is brisk walking, right? Moderate intensity. 4 miles an hour. So, if you walk 2 miles, walk back, you get back within an hour, you just did it.
Good to see you again, Doctor. The question regards how to reverse the negative effects of the mRNA delivery system and metal toxicity, besides like wheatgrass and cilantro that I've heard helps.
In terms of heavy metal toxicity, the best way to detox is to not tox in the first place. But they found that the nice thing about heavy metals is suppose some of these persistent organic pollutants like PCBs and DDT, which can last, very difficult to get rid of, although it stores in your fat, so if you lose weight, that can help, although then it goes in your brain. It's not necessarily a great thing. But heavy metals are there's some stored in your bones, but within months, for example, they took people and they removed animal products from their diet, a significant drop in cadmium, lead, mercury, all the heavy metals, and then within a matter of months, and then of course when we went back to the original diet, the levels came back up again. So it's nice in that it's very reactive to one's diet. And so your body has these natural detox mechanisms, right? These are natural elements, right, that are found everywhere. Our body has a system for getting rid of them, but we have to help it by not adding more than we can get rid of. And in terms of mRNA vaccines, these will protect you from a disease that's killed millions of people called COVID-19, and encourage people to not just get vaccinated for COVID-19. And if you don't like mRNA, there's Novavax. There's a traditional vaccine made from just the protein, no mRNA involved at all. So you can get any kind of vaccine you want, but I encourage you to maintain. And we just had a new study come out. It's fitting that the latest rounds of boosters does actually work against this newest variant that's running around. And so I made sure to get it and encourage others as well.
And thank you for your book on how to survive a pandemic. I put my copy on the piano up front.
What are your thoughts on those that can't seem to, that have unhealthy cholesterol numbers, heart disease, but yet can't take statins, and the statins cause like muscle damage that kind of like is a lifestyle change, change.
So ideally, so the question was, how do we lower cholesterol? Ideally, we do it by treating the cause. What causes high cholesterol? Three things: excess consumption of trans fats, found basically in meat, dairy, and junk food; saturated fats, found concentrated in meat, dairy, junk food; and then dietary cholesterol, found in animal products, concentrated mostly in egg yolks. So by just cutting out those, the average LDL cholesterol hit 68, perfect, exactly where we want to be, but it's a bell curve. So some people do everything right, and they're still too high. And then what do you do? Okay, then you go to the next step, which is adding foods to your diet. First step is cutting away bad foods. The second step is adding foods to your diet that actively pull cholesterol from your body. And there's a number of different foods. In fact, they're all compiled together by Dr. David Jenkins at the University of Toronto, a very preeminent scientist, into what's called the portfolio diet. He's the one that invented the glycemic index. And so the portfolio diet is a portfolio of different foods that decrease your cholesterol via different mechanisms. So they have this additive effect. So they want you to eat, soluble fiber-rich foods every day, like slimy foods like oatmeal, okra, eggplant, on down the list, a whole bunch of different foods. And so then that has been found, and it's a strictly plant-based diet, but it has these extra plants specifically found to lower cholesterol. Reduces cholesterol better than any other diet has ever been shown to, on par with what you see with statin drugs. And then the question is, even if you are, have genetics such, there's something called familial hypercholesterolemia, where you can have cholesterol over 500, people die in their 20s from heart attacks. It's really tragic. I mean, there certainly are cases where you'd have to do everything possible with diet plus add drugs. And you're saying, wait a second, I can't take statin drugs, and I can't get my cholesterol down in any other way. There are now on the market multiple other different classes of drugs, like the PCSK9 inhibitors, which could lower your cholesterol through different mechanisms and would not have the kind of muscle intolerance side effects, but may still have like the increase your risk of diabetes side effects. But hey, diabetes is killer number 6, heart disease killer number 1, so it's still, the benefits may outweigh the risks.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. You are an anomaly for a physician.
I take that as a compliment.
I've been RDN for several decades, but so it's great to hear this lecture. Wonderful job, thank you. A quick question. Omega-3 fatty acids. Could you comment on the plant-based form versus fish?
Yeah, so there's short-chain omega-3s, alpha-linolenic acid, found in flax seeds and hemp seeds and chia seeds and walnuts, which our body can elongate into the long-chain so-called fish fats like EPA and DHA. The question is, can it be done enough for optimal health? And the concern is that, particularly for older men, our bodies may not be able to optimally elongate the short-chain omega-3s. And so I encourage people to not only get a tablespoon of ground flax seeds into your daily diet, gives you about 2.2 grams of ALA, but to consider taking preformed DHA from a pollutant-free source, so an algae-based source. So 250 milligrams of algae-based DHA every day, not for heart health, but for cognitive health in one's later years, particularly for men. And finally, the pressure's on.
Yeah. People that join the Sun City ESLL club are joined because they want to learn about what should and should not be accepted into one's body. One of the things that we're told to accept in our body are vaccines. Do you have any concerns currently about the vaccines that we have taken?
So I commented about COVID vaccine, but there's a whole long list of vaccines. So of course, for example, anyone who's like, well, I don't like vaccines across the board, let me remind you of the eradication from the planet Earth of a disease called smallpox, which killed literally hundreds of millions of people. This great scourge eliminated in the 1970s, thanks to a global vaccination campaign, probably one of our greatest public health victories of all time. But then, as with any medical intervention, there's pros and cons. You have to make sure that the benefits outweigh the risks. In terms of adult vaccinations, there's a recommendation for flu shots every year, which is newly reformulated. They look at Australia and they say, this is what's coming in winter next year in the Northern Hemisphere. Sometimes they're better at it than others in terms of targeting the right strain. But significantly reduce not only the risk of influenza, but the sequelae. So after influenza can destabilize plaque in the heart, so your risk of having a heart attack after influenza is significantly elevated, such that flu vaccines, the flu shots not only saves your life from not dying from influenza pneumonia, but also saves lives from heart disease. And then starting at age 50, everyone is recommended to get a shingles vaccine series. It's a 2-vaccine series, which I recommend. I turned 50 last year and made sure I got mine, lined up for mine. 1 in 3 people will get shingles. It's amazing people don't know about this disease. 1 in 3 people get shingles in their lifespan, but you can dramatically reduce your risk by getting vaccinated. Then at age 65, a pneumonia vaccination is recommended against pneumococcus, which is the leading cause of community-acquired bacterial pneumonia, and recommend people do that as well to reduce your risk of drowning to death from pneumonia.
We have time for 2 more questions.
2 more, let's do it.
Hi, you talked about goji berries in your book as it pertains to protecting against muscular degeneration. Macular, excuse me, my apologies. As it pertains to vision loss, can you talk a little bit about that in depth and any other recommendations you have about protecting against vision loss, please?
Absolutely. So I have a whole chapter on preserving your vision. And the good news is that dietary changes can reduce our risk of all 4 major causes of vision loss, including macular degeneration, which is the leading cause of blindness in this country. The primary recommendation is for 2 pigments, the so-called macular pigments, which protect your retina from the sun's rays, from the blue rays of the sun, and they're yellow. Lutein and zeaxanthin found concentrated in dark green leafy vegetables. So I encourage people to eat green. In fact, dark green leafy vegetables are actually used to treat the disease in its earliest stages to try to reverse changes. And so the recommendation for green consumption is to prevent macular degeneration is 2 to 3 servings a day of dark green leafy vegetables, so at least greens at every lunch and dinner, with bonus points for sneaking greens into breakfast, like in a green smoothie or something. And then there's some berry pigments that can help as well. Goji berries, you can get them, I don't know if you have any good Asian groceries around there, but you can get them super cheaper than raisins, but they're called lycium berries or wolf berries, but it's the same thing as goji berries. They're just kind of sold at a premium at natural food stores. And then there's a bunch of other things in the Preserving Your Vision chapter to deal with cataracts, diabetic retinopathy, and glaucoma.
And our final question.
Dr. Greger, as far as you know, do you know if any doctor conducted research in the following area? Is there a correlation between being a vegan and diminishing frequency in sexual intercourse?
Being a vegan and a decrease in the frequency of sexual intercourse? Because of libido, or because no one wants to have sex with you, or because, I mean, like, what?
That you eat, depending on what you eat, may stimulate sexual intercourse versus legumes and other sorts of greens don't really stimulate sexual thoughts.
No. Oh, I see. Like thinking like oysters or something have like aphrodisiac properties or something. Is that where you're getting?
Well, when you go to the supermarket or whatever you are preaching to it, don't really stimulate sexual thoughts, do they?
Oh, well, I mean, I think what stimulates sexual thoughts may be on kind of an individual by individual basis, but what stimulates sexual function are the nitrates in greens, right? That's how the drugs like Viagra work. You can use veggie Viagra instead by eating dark green leafy vegetables, as well as a compound in watermelon, particularly yellow watermelon, called citrulline, through the same pathway. Both can improve sexual function in men, though they've not been tested in women.
Yes, I was about to say, yes, the documentary Game Changers explains
yes,
the equipment.
No, there's a great documentary where they actually measure penile firmness after eating a plant-based meal versus, and guess who came up with that idea to measure erectile firmness? Dr. Greger. Yeah, no, I was a scientific advisor on the film. Yeah, it was fun. In fact, the latest Netflix documentary, Everybody See You Are What You Eat, just came out January 1st. They did it with women, measuring kind of, genital blood flow in women, and had kind of similar results. I thought it was really fascinating as well. Anyway, thank you so much, everyone. Happy to sign books.
We have a few announcements. We have a few important announcements, and thank you so much, Dr. Greger.
Jesus.
Standing, yes, thank you so very much.